My Hero Academia just entered its final season, and seeing what I've read as manga while it was coming out put onto the screen is just delightful. And this is one of the rare times that I can comment on a full series while it's still relevant, as I usually wait a bit longer before making a video on it. And this time, because it is ending, there can't be any argument saying it gets better, which, by the way, I really rarely see a work increase in quality as it progresses. Progression in plot is not progression in quality, but I like the series a lot. I like big shonens usually, so I thought I'd give an honest, holistic review on the entire series. My Hero Academia has a premise that should be familiar to all of us. Heroes fight villains in a world where superpowers exist. We've seen this many times, especially if you're from a Western country. It obviously takes a lot of inspiration from Western-style superheroes with their designs and names. The clear Japanese twist they put on it is to make the setting a school that trains and nurtures the future heroes of the world. This is the story of Izuku, or Deku, a boy born without a superpower, and his journey to become the best hero. You all know this already, and for this video I'm also going to assume that you know what happens in the story, so especially later on there will be spoilers, but I'll warn you whenever there is one, so don't worry too much. I'll be doing analysis on certain plot points, world building stuff, relations, and some character specific stuff which I thought stand out a lot, because I think that this series centers most of the plot on characters rather than what just happens, and I think it's a crucial part of being a good show. You need to have developed characters who progress or grow in some way as the story goes on. You can say many things about plot points, but if you have poorly written characters, you automatically have a poorly written story. Now, obviously, there is a plot to this story, but it's not that crazily well written if you think about it. It's Deku becoming stronger and the heroes fighting the villains and trying to be the biggest, baddest guy. But what makes it more complex than that isn't necessarily any unexpected twists or anything like that, it's rather the characters and their growths. Most of the characters have a good amount of time throughout the series to develop and grow. We see relationships grow, we see maturing. It feels like they are actually kids who grow up. That's the whole point of the show, and I'm so glad that they got it right. However, I still think there are some problems with the characters. And also, one more thing before I get started. Nuanced opinions! Did I scare you? Because it seems so many of you are scared or incapable of having any nuanced opinions. You don't have to love everything about a show or hate it. Those are not the two options. And for those absolute morons who are incapable of forming nuanced opinions, I'll state this now. I like this show. I think the show is good, but I don't think it's a perfect show, and I'm gonna say why. So don't come crying in the comments because I said your favorite show has flaws. But anyways, not all of the characters really get the same attention. Now, obviously, it's a big cast, and they can't have the whole show be about each and every one of them, but then, at that point, why add them? A general rule for writing is that if the character has a significant introduction, they should be that much significant. Everyone in Class 1A has significant introductions. A lot of other people from other classes and other schools do the same, but they just aren't given the same treatment. For example, Bird Boy, Cake Boy, Tail Boy, pretty much everyone in Class 1B, everyone from any other school, including Wind Boy, and so many more characters are given huge introductions, making us think that they will be important, but end up getting no part in the plot or getting any personal growth. For example, Bird Boy. He's given a very unique design and he is shown to be pretty damn strong, but we never see any growth from him. We aren't ever shown anything about him. We don't see him grow. We don't see anything. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just develop the character at all. Kirishima was a good example. He looks important. We are given a somewhat big introduction. He plays a moderate part in the show, and we get to see him grow past his fears and being inspired by Mina. We also see them get closer as the show goes on. That's enough. That's perfect. They gave him a sizable introduction and sizable growth. Inasa, or Wind Boy as I like to call him, from the other school. He showed up during the Hasaikai arc. He's given a somewhat big introduction with his unique, distinguished design and bombastic personality, and we are given some backstory and growth. He loves passion and hates Endeavor and Shoto because they seem like jerks. He works it through and is given a complete arc. Short, but enough. But look at some of the people from Class 1A. If you're a part of the central crew of the entire story, you need to be at least that much developed. At the very least, everyone in Class 1A needs to be developed. Sero, Sato, Ojiro, and Tokuyami all have absolutely nothing. At that point, it's better to just remove them from the story. I get that the class would seem a little small without them, so it would just be optimal to develop them. I don't know, give them a little something, anything. Like, anything. Here, off the top of my head. Sero. Let's make it so that he is afraid and ashamed of being too normal, too plain, and not outstanding enough compared to the others. Therefore, he struggles by himself and becomes stronger. There. Cake Boy. We can make it so that he loves sweets not only because of this quirk, but because when he was having a bad day, his parents would always make him a bomb-ass cake. And, I don't know, in times when everyone in the class is having trouble, which is very often, so they've had lots of chances to do this, he bakes them a cake and boosts their morale. Ojiro, maybe having a tail made it hard for him to learn traditional martial arts, which he loved, but someone he respected told him that his tail is an awesome asset and helps him build his own fighting style, and maybe during one of the arcs his tail gets injured and it can't be used, he struggles and realizes that he has been too reliant on it, and he learns to fight with and without it. Tokoyami, they can just make it so that he got bullied for being a bird or whatever. Like, there are so many things they could do, and even what I just said, what I thought off the top of my head would be better than what the writer did. And I'm sure they can think of way more creative things. And remember, my point isn't that they all need to be main character material, that would also be bad. All I'm saying is that each of them needs some sort of development, progression, and closure. There needs to be a personal problem and then working through it. It's really not a lot, it can be super simple, but if that's impossible, then it's way better to just remove them. And you know what? Since I'm already talking about flaws, I'll just say the one other major flaw I have with this. Their dialogue at times is really corny. Specifically, whenever they say the word academia or do a name drop, like during Ochiko's heartfelt speech to the disgruntled citizens staying at UA, she says something like, "Please continue to let this be our hero academia," and every single time they do shit like that, it instantly breaks any immersion, and it makes me just scoff. It's weird. It's weird in English, and it's not even a common word in Japanese, so it's weird there too. It's just all around weird. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I know it's not too big, but it does break the immersion whenever it's an important and emotional scene, because they only really say it during significant moments. But let me also talk about one flaw that really isn't a flaw. The fandom. The show is good, but the fandom sucks. Yeah, fuck you, I'm sorry, but this is the dumbest argument I've ever seen, and it still pisses me off. First off, you can just watch the show without going on Reddit, you can just do that. I did not even know that it was notorious for having a bad fandom until later because I don't go to the Reddits or forums. Also, it's not a bad fandom. I mean, sure, there are creeps, but what, you think there aren't any creeps for every fandom? I promise you, every big show has hentai and weird fanfic and weird ships. This show is not anything special in that regard. In fact, it's so not bad that I'll put footage of me scrolling the subreddit unedited in one take for the rest of this section. I think it's just the one people target because it is one of the bigger ones that made anime mainstream, so this was a lot of people's first anime. And because more people heard about this one and found the generic weirdos, they target this. And also, by saying things like, the fandom is bad, by saying that and having that be what you say online about it, you are inadvertently a part of the fandom now. You are a part of the toxic fandom just by saying that. And sure, it's a different sector of the fandom, but I'd argue that this one's worse. It's just shitty edgelords thinking that they're too cool and say that the fandom is shit. My guy, there are hundreds of thousands of you who think just like you and put their opinions online. It's almost like an online subculture. Oh, what is the definition of a fandom? An online community or subculture surrounding a certain subject. You are what you hate the most. One argument that is kinda valid is that you want to talk to people about it. I get that. I like talking about anime, so I made a YouTube channel. But some people want to just join forums and talk with strangers about things more casually, but the fandom is preventing them from doing so. Again, there are thousands of people who want to talk about the show but don't like the fandom. Maybe then, there are thousands of people just like you who you can talk about the show with. Also, let's be real, the vast majority of people aren't gonna be weird in the Reddit servers. Sure, there are weirdos drawing lewd images of very underage and illegal girls, but again, that exists for pretty much every anime and they all suck. So this show doesn't really particularly have a bad fandom. If you don't like this show's fandom, you just don't like anime fandoms in general. So if you're still one to say, the fandom sucks so I won't watch it, or the show is bad because of the fandom, I hope your voice cracks in front of your crush and you run out of toilet paper after taking a classroom of the elites, you forget your towel when you go shower, you get bad teammates in whatever game you play, and you get a weird sharp non-lethal pain on the right side of your chest. Screw you. And also screw you if you're not subscribed, so maybe sub, please?
No.
Anyways, that's pretty much all the problems I have with the show. The rest will actually be me praising it. For such a big show, that really isn't a lot of flaws. That's what, one actually big flaw, one somewhat small thing that kind of pissed me off a lot, but is also kind of valid, and one flaw that isn't actually a flaw? Pretty good. Other than that, this show is a really good shonen. It has good characters for the most parts, and because it often centers a plot around the characters, it doesn't fall into one of the biggest traps battle shonen fall into, making their battles pointless. The single most important thing in a battle or action scene is to give it a point. Sure, it should look cool and be creative, sure, it should sound awesome and feel epic, but the prerequisite to that, the most important part that makes things feel epic, is the battle having a point. Something, whether it's a character's emotions or how mature they are or a large status quo update on the arc, something has to change. The state of the world or the character should never be the same before and after a fight, and this show does this really well. Look at Demon Slayer for example. Many of the fights have a purpose, but the one against the ball bitch? What changed before and after the fight? They weren't important enough for it to really matter, and Tanjiro didn't really grow as a character from it. Maybe you can make the excuse that they introduced Tamayo through it, but you could 100% do that in other ways. Pretty much all of Gachiakta does this. The last battle against Amo, what changes with Rudo? He doesn't really grow because of the battle. Rudo, I guess, is nice to her at the end, but no event in the battle caused this change. The battle was nothing. She's not even that important to the overall plot it seems, as you would know if you saw the ending of that episode. Hiroaka, however, every fight seems to serve a purpose, and if something can be done without a fight, they often do that as well. For example, one of the most emotional scenes in the entire show was when Eri smiled. That was done not through a battle, but through a dance. Sure, Deku had a fight between Gentle and La Brava, which wasn't as deep, but still not pointless. It was an obvious commentary on nuisance streamers and YouTubers. All of them suck. But it also kinda shows Deku and the two villains' growths. He is given a new perspective that not all villains are necessarily evil, and that they feel things like love as well. But let's talk about some other fights. Class 1A vs Shigaraki in the first season introduces Shigaraki, the state of the world changes, and the characters realize that they're in serious business, and they all decide to train harder. All Might vs Nomu is Deku's first realization to what the central motto of UA plus Ultra really means. All Might was giving beyond 100% effort, which Deku states, and Deku learns to do that in the future. The battles in the school tournament arc mostly have either status quo changes or growths in character. The team stuff has the characters learning to work together and builds their relationships. We see the characters get closer from this, and this change is permanent. Bakugo vs Ochako resulted in Ochako growing. Deku vs Shinso. Shinso grows a lot, and Deku had his first real encounter with One for All. Deku vs Todoroki shows a shit ton of growth in Todoroki. There are a couple that don't do this, for example Bakugo vs Tokoyami and Todoroki vs Sero, but I don't think these are problems in the fights and rather the characters lacking any sort of depth as I mentioned earlier. But the majority of fights in the show actually matter. I don't know why this is hard for some writers to do, it seems pretty obvious, but it's important, and this series does this well. I think the best example, and one of, if not the best fight in the entire series, is the Bakugo vs Deku fight. Why I say this is because I think this is by far the most emotional fight. Up until this point, Bakugo's been a dickhead and a bully. I'm glad that they don't try to hide this. I think before this point, he was pretty universally hated. They don't try to pull some bullshit and try to justify it. He was a bully and a shitty guy, that's it. But from that, we can grow, and Bakugo's growth and character development is phenomenal. Bakugo was always number one. He was Deku's biggest bully, but also one of Deku's inspirations. When Deku thinks of victory, he always thinks of Bakugo. Fun fact, his name, Katsuki, Katsu means to win. And this is also why before big tournaments and stuff, you'll see a lot of Japanese people eating katsu, or like pork cutlets or chicken cutlets, you know? It's to symbolize victory. And since Bakugo has been going through a bunch of things and Deku has slowly been catching up, his bravado and ego makes him try to assert his dominance again. Not necessarily to show Deku who's number one, but for his fragile ego. There are so many complex emotions involved. It's Bakugo's feeling of responsibility for All Might losing his powers while the person he hates the most gaining them. It's him feeling inferior or even equal to Deku, someone who he's always felt superior to. It's the feeling of, why is it Deku to be chosen for One for All and not me? It's the feeling of accumulated frustration from everything that has been happening. It's the fear of being left behind. It's the despair of being saved by someone who he thinks inferior to him. It's the feeling of, if only I were stronger, which is a prominent theme in this series. From Deku, it's beating and going past the person who he's always looked up to. It's being on equal terms with Bakugo. It's saving the guy. It's the feeling of pent-up frustration over the years. And because of all these emotions, the fight has high stakes. It matters the most. It doesn't even have to look super cool, even though it does. And after the fight, so much changes. Bakugo and Deku can finally see eye to eye and be on equal terms without either of them feeling bad about it. The fight is acknowledgement. The fight is an exchange of ideas. The fight is growth. And moving past his team itself, always at the mercy of Bakugo, Deku decides to fight back and force them to understand each other. And even though Bakugo wins, he doesn't really feel like it. It's only with All Might's affirmations and realization that Bakugo is also still a kid that he feels at ease. In the end, All Might states that a hero needs both of their traits, the yearning of constant victory, but also Deku's wanting to save and understand people. These are one of the moments where the characters grow from kids to being one step closer to a hero. And by the way, what sets this show apart from others is that you can see this parallel in the villains as well. You see heroes grow often, sure, but how often do you see villains go through just as much growth? Everyone in the League of Villains goes through tremendous amounts of growth in character. At first, Shigaraki had a very childish mind. He does what he does for shallow reasons and has smaller goals. He kinda just does whatever All for One wants him to. However, later on in the show, he takes over. His motives start lining up with All for One's, and it even has some unique differences. He now is the boss. He now will take initiative. He has grown from a villain's pawn to a full-fledged villain. Same thing with Toga. Toga was doing kinda whatever. She just wanted a world where she can be happy and do the things she wants in, but during the final fight, she grows and realizes her bigger and more specific motive: to kill all heroes, the people who won't let her be happy. And this is ironically the opposite of what happens to All for One, which, if you know what happens to him, we can just say that he ungrows. From here until whatever timestamp I put on, there may be a bit of spoilers, so skip to that if you want. Because I also want to talk about Toga and her complete journey, and she is someone that I can write a whole video on, so I'll try to make it shorter. There are so many characters I can write full videos on. All Might, Endeavor, Twice, and more. So I'll just really quickly mention that All Might and Endeavor's dynamic, the best and the second best, is beautifully done here. There are already many videos on YouTube on this exact topic, and they will do a much better job explaining it than I do. But Toga, I love how they don't make her evil. She is wronging the world that wronged her. Sure, that's a pretty typical trope, but what they do with it specifically is so much more impactful. First off, she wasn't really even trying to wrong it at first. She was simply trying to make a world where she can be happy, which everyone is doing. Even later, after her motives change a little, this comfortable world for her is still a major influence. But her arc touches on how she shows affection and how the difference in the way she does it has pretty much prevented her from any sort of love. It shows us the anguish a child must feel when a parent tries to fix their child rather than nurture and help them. And during her fight with Ochako, Ochako finally tries to understand, and we are shown that Toga is just a girl. She's just a kid. She just wants what everyone wants: love and affection. Once she finally gets that and is acknowledged by Ochako, she's content, and she doesn't want the one person who cared for her to die. She chooses to give her all her blood, which is a nice symbolic touch. Her quirk lets her be the person she loves if she drinks their blood, and that is how she showed affection. But finally, as all of her blood will become Ochako's, she is, in a way, becoming Ochako. And the line, "Am I cute?" to really sell that she is just a girl, oh my god, everything is perfect. This was beautiful. Like, I don't feel this way for a lot of shows, but this arc or this battle was special to me. There are only a few moments or arcs in the entire medium that are special and dear to me. One of them is pretty much the entire show of Yorimoi. Another is a scene from Your Name with the comet splitting. Another is the I Want to Live scene from One Piece. And of course, there's also the Bochi shredding scene, Mob Psycho's dimple scene, Haikyuu's Tsukishima just one block scene, even though I don't think the show is phenomenal or anything. I think that one scene is. And this arc with Toga. Like, I don't know if you guys understand how much this means. I've read a gross amount of manga and seen even a more disgusting amount of anime, and these few scenes, moments, and arcs are the only ones that are truly special to me. Toga's arc is truly a masterpiece. I also want to talk about design a little. The arcs, the structure, and the macro level design of the story is done masterfully, but something we can't overlook is the micro level design, the smaller stuff. So not the structure of the story itself, but more the character and power design, because I think this show has one of the most creative power systems. Obviously, they're all just superpowers, but what I think makes them interesting is how the powers are ingrained into their biologies. Though they are superpowers, they don't ever feel like magic, rather a part of their bodies. Every power has its own set of corporeal limitations bound by their own physical bodies. Iida's rocket legs overheat, Bakugo uses sweat to explode, Eraserhead's powers stop once he blinks, Uraraka gets nauseous after a while, French Dick Laser gets a stomachache after a while. Right? While some of these powers are unique and brand new, a lot of the others aren't. But what makes them each unique is the drawbacks and limitations. Remember, in a magic system, it is always less about what you can do, but what you can't. And the powers in the show take that philosophy to the heart, and with this, they can make very uninteresting powers interesting. Dabi's power is literally just fire. So many characters in fiction have this, but Dabi has a unique twist. His body is also susceptible to damage from the fire, so his skin burns and melts as he uses it more and more. This makes for a grotesque, ruthless villain look while also making him more badass. Iida is the typical super speed guy, but his limitations are in his engines. Denki's is just to control electricity, but he fries his brain if too much. Initially, Deku's was inherently just super strength, but it takes a toll on his body, and as he learns to control it, it becomes more nuanced and interesting in what he can do. So though there is no intricate design where everything can be determined quantitatively, it is still very meticulously made so that no quirk really feels like bullshit. There will always be some condition. The only power I think that kinda felt like bullshit was Shigaraki growing hands. I don't think that was ever explained properly, and he really has no reason to be able to do that. But I digress. Another important part of design is the characters. The character design in the show is phenomenal. Not only do all the characters look unique, their powers, as I mentioned earlier, their personalities, their costumes, hero names all match each other. Things just make sense. The characters and their traits are all unique, which is hard to do. We have a really wide cast, but each of them have distinct personalities. Try to guess who I'm talking about. I'll try to be as vague as possible. A very diligent, charismatic person who is straight-laced, some would say to a fault. Obviously, it's Iida. Try this one. An outgoing, rhapsodic person who often takes the initiative in things like making friends, putting themselves out there, etc. Mina. A cool, calm, and collected person who shows their affection to everyone, though a bit monotone. Tsuyu. A good way to know if your character is unique is to start describing them, starting very vague and slowly getting more and more specific. If it takes less descriptions to get it, the more unique. Some of them you wouldn't be able to get at all, and that's when you know you fucked up. Look at the majority of shitty romance or isekai characters. Think just how many descriptive words and traits it would take to make the guess. Let's try Nino from Quintessential Quintuplets. Shy, caring, hard-spoken, strong-willed. How many does that narrow it down to? It can be Chitoge from Nisekoi, Taiga from Toradora, Asuka, Alia, even Itsuki, her own sister, and so many more. You can add Violent to the mix and it narrows out Itsuki and a few others, but there are still so many left. It's impossible to narrow it down with only character traits. You have to use plot points specific to the show. For example, for Alia, you would have to say that she speaks Russian or something. You would never be able to be 100% sure who you're talking about or even narrow it down without something like this. And sure, it is fair to say that what happens in the show is important to their character, and I'd agree, but the list should be narrowed down a little more than that. Let's try Deku. Shy, timid, soft-spoken, heroic, strong-willed, passionate. This narrows it down to Okarun, Deku, Tanjiro, Takemichi, maybe Shigeo, maybe Norman, maybe Bochi? But now I'm really stretching it. I really tried to find as many characters as possible to match that description, but the only strong ones are Okarun, Deku, Tanjiro, Takemichi, and Shigeo. The other two are kinda pushing the limits a little, but I narrowed it down much more. All Might, bombastic, loud, charismatic, inspirational, reliable like no other, altruistic. This narrows it down to Luffy, Naruto, but then also there are more reliable feeling people than him in the show. Asta, same deal. Goku, wouldn't say he's too charismatic. Lemillion, I guess? But you see, most of the main characters in Hero Aka pass that test. And by the way, this isn't necessarily about how good a character is. Once they add stuff like backstories, progression, relationships with each other, etc., they become fully fleshed out characters. This is only how new and refreshing, how unique they are to begin with. And outside the characters, even things like the music, sound design, OPs are all so awesome. I'm not a musically talented guy. I mean, I played the trombone in middle school in a band for a bit, but that was about it. So I can't really tell you in music theory or anything why the music sounds so sick, but I can tell you that the music hits hard. The sound design too, I don't know much about sound design, but every sound, punch, and blast all sound satisfying and deliver that sense of impact. And the OPs, Jesus. Mother's Basement has a lot of videos on them, so I would just watch that. I know I like the songs and the OPs, and that's pretty much it. Peace Sign by Yonezu Kenshi, Shout Baby by Ryokuo Shokushakai, and Curtain Call by Yuri go especially hard in my opinion. Check them out if you haven't. One more thing I liked was how they handled death. Death is an important part of anime. It often has the biggest impacts and is the end of a character. Therefore, deaths can be super emotional, and it also marks the end of a story. And because I'm gonna talk about deaths, there will be a bit more spoilers here, so skip to this if you care. Night Eye had a full arc with his problems, his development, and finally, closure. Same thing with Toga, as I mentioned earlier. All Might's big form in a way, and Dabi too? I especially enjoyed how they handled his death. He hates his family and everything they stand for because he feels as if they abandoned him and didn't acknowledge him enough. His whole goal is revenge on them. But there in his final moments, his whole family is finally united and they all acknowledge each other. Endeavor apologizes for all the years of abuse and neglect, but Dabi still curses him, because a hatred that deep shouldn't go away that easily. I'm glad that they did not do that. He curses them to the end, but at the very least, they're there to share that burden together now. At the very least, he is being heard. And when he's taking his last breaths, it makes you wonder if things could have gone differently if they just looked at him a bit more. It's a painful arc, but painfully majestic in a weird way. How he's lying there burnt to a crisp, struggling to breathe while looking all gross, but still cursing everyone, while his family accepts that and listens to him. Oh my god, that packed a punch. I also want to look at Midnight Sensei's death. You might be thinking that she didn't really have a complete arc, and I think that's true, but I also think that's kind of the point. The point of her death was to shock, to deliver emotion, and to show us that shit's going down. Midnight was always so likable, and though she wasn't developed like crazy, we still had a general sense of who she was, a jolly, happy teacher. But during her final moments, we see the smiles go away as she struggles. It makes us feel things, and the students will obviously care. She had so much going for her, and possibly a full arc ahead of her, but that was just cut short. I mentioned in my death video that this is a pretty nice thing to do when you want to go for this effect. Don't just kill off some random nobody like Marco. Don't just introduce a character randomly and say, hey guys, nudge nudge, this guy is important and we love him totally so much. It would totally suck if he died, just to kill him off in the next episode. That is way too obvious, and we don't give a shit because the relationships shown are so artificial. Make us get attached to the characters, make us think that they have more going for them, that they have a future. Develop them enough to make us care what happens to them. Then, brutally cut them from the story, and that will hit so goddamn hard. Speaking of hitting hard, something else that hits super goddamn hard is that good shit. But also the themes of legacy and how the past and how you interact with people changes people, and those people will one day help change you. It's the theme of connection, and if you know anything about connections, you know that, well, it has to be connected, and connecting such a wide web of characters to each other is hard as hell. Harder than a Minecraft YouTuber at a playground. Seriously, how hard is it to not Never mind, subscribe. All Might and Endeavor have a relationship. Endeavor and his kids all share that link and also burden. Deku is connected to All Might, Endeavor, and Shoto, and he changes all of them in some way. Legacy and passing things down is actually one of the central ideas in the show. It's the idea of the next one, which is beautifully shown through things like One for All and dialogue choices. One for All is mainly the power to pass down powers, and over time, the powers and wisdom of the predecessors accumulate into Deku. However, Deku doesn't truly have it yet. All Might still exists up until his fight with All for One, to which he finally declares that Deku is the next one. He has fully passed the torch, and once the torch is finally his, Deku can finally take down the curse of All for One with the power and guidance of the previous users. This also parallels All for One's power of not being able to pass down his powers. He can only have All for One, all for himself, but there's never anyone to pass it down to. Everything ends with him. This is one of the primary reasons he wants One for All so badly. It's honestly poetic the way they write about generational trauma and how shit passes down. Even things so simple like Deku's mom being sorry about Deku being quirkless has a really great impact on the cast. All Might being the greatest really bothers Endeavor, and he pushes that burden onto his family, which ultimately makes Dabi go evil and Shoto go cold. This also has a small ripple effect on people like Inasa and Hawks. And when Deku helps change Shoto, that also helps change Endeavor and repair their messed up family. Toga was messed up by her parents from a young age because they rejected her, and that caused Toga to turn out how she did. Uraraka wanted to help her parents. You see, legacy is such a big part in this story, and it's done so well. It's more than just cheap synthetic connections which are simply told to us by the author. It is shown, and we can see the effects of how these things affect everyone around them. And the moments where all these setup connections all collide are really poignant for that reason. Class 1A versus Deku is a good example of this. Deku has obviously affected everyone in the class in some way. He saved them and he helped them. He became friends with them. And we're shown this throughout the series, and when they all return the favors and help him, the connections are finally put together. And the final touch is how Deku and Bakugo influenced each other. Because even though this is after their fight and they are a bit better, they still aren't necessarily close. But these episodes and this battle is when they each finally accept everything. Bakugo acknowledges and says to Deku why he felt the way he did, why he did the messed up things he did, and he apologizes, finally calling him Izuku rather than Deku, which was supposed to be an insult, and this helps Deku finally come around. In this show, the characters do things, but not only do they do things, others do things back, and the things they do back do things to the original person, and it causes a chain reaction or ripple of change and growth. This makes the characters feel so real for such an obviously fake world. And the way they react is also very true to the characters. When they say or do things, when they express how they feel, you just think, well, yeah, that sounds like them, because they have been developed so well and we have an idea of how they would react. And for now, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I could make a 3-hour video going through every single arc, every single cool writing decision, every single character, and their entire arcs and how it ties back to the main story, but that would just be me absolutely glazing the fuck out of Hiroaka and Deku's dick, and after too long, that could get redundant and it would be me just going, ooh, that's cool. Oh, that was cool too. Damn, that's sick. And I don't really want to do that for hours, so I'll save us all the trouble. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have seen it, watch some parts again and really think about the choices the mangaka makes. It's all super cool stuff. Overall, I think Hiroaka is just really good. I know that's a stupidly simple way of putting it for someone who's supposed to be writing about shit, but I think it's just good. I don't know how else to put it. It's really solid and it's one of my favorite shonens. Many shonens, especially of recent years, feel like they've gone to shit. People aren't able to or won't write deep characters and character growth, and it seems like the authors feel like the characters all have to be an exact clone of Jinru or Kirito. They don't care about good writing, they care about what's coolest and what has the sparkliest sparkles. I fucking hate that. But NoahBoahCoah was one of the good ones, where characters actually matter, where characters grow, where the characters have personalities. And it pisses me off that this show on Mao has an average of about 7.5, while things like Solo Leveling and Haikyuu have scores closer to 8.5. I certainly don't think either of those are bad, but I don't think they're 8.5 good. I think both of these should be closer to 7, which is still above average in my book. And I think NoahBoahCoah should be in between 8 and 8.5. Also, small rant, but can we bring the thing back where 5 is average? 5 is objectively average, it is half. It is objectively average. Anything above that, they're doing more good things than bad, and anything below that, they're doing less good things than they're doing good. So 5 is average, it's not 7. Everyone says it's 7, it pisses me off. It's 5, it's 5. But I digress. Fortunately, it seems that people like this last season more, and they've given it an 8.8 so far, but recency bias and whatever. But yeah, Mal sucks. My hero good. Anyways, there you have it. My name is NoahBoahCoah, and I just rage bought the $12 pass for the Evo skeleton, and now I regret it. And thank you for watching.